There are those lies which are told that are, well, they're the lies that you can tell when you hear them. They're like buttercream icing around a poo-poo cake or buttercream icing around a balloon. Once you get past the icing, what's on the inside is either a nothing sandwich or it's awful. But the lie itself, it's a great coating. It's a great distraction. It's a great cover. That's what I want to talk about today. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And in case you hadn't noticed, there's a whole lot of deception going on in our world today. And usually that deception has the power of being a distraction that causes you to think a particular way. But here's the art form that I want you to pay particular attention to. In fact, I'm gonna challenge you. If you're a leader of any caliber, and by caliber, I don't just mean the magnitude of those you lead. I mean, if you got any rock salt in you at all, to say, hang on, I don't just fall for the status quo. I don't just believe everything that I'm told. I don't believe every news report that comes up or headline that I read. Because this tactic, this strategic approach to deception has been extremely effective, especially in recent years. I would say in the last generation or two. And I play in this area sometimes just to see how much it affects me. And it's extremely persuasive, and it's very pervasive in our economy today. Here's what I mean. So if you go to any kind of social media forum, it used to be that TikTok was the one that had the very short. First, it was Snapchat. It would be 30 seconds or so. You could do a video clip or something. It would last for 30 seconds. And then, according to Snapchat, it was gone forever. Nobody knew what you just did on video. So only those who saw you doing it, which meant people had to subscribe. They had to be followers. They had to be connected to you. So if you communicated with them on Snapchat, that's the only chance you got to see it. But then it kind of got stretched a little further, and then Twitter started doing it through Periscope. And then after Twitter, it was TikTok. And with TikTok, you can actually build an entire series ad campaign type of a thing where you'll do 1 or 2 or 3 minutes of a presentation of some sort or a video of some sort. And then people watch that video and they get to the end and they realize, that's not the whole thing. And so they click again and they follow you to see the rest of the video series. And it's a very effective hook, as we would call it in advertising. What is the hook? A song has a hook. A headline has a hook. Any kind of persuasive conversation has a hook in it, like a catfish gets hooked. And we tend to get hooked by this emotional appeal, by this grandiose expectation that is set up by the best delivery forms, that teaser, that you're going to want this, you're going to want to know. And you see them in the headlines, so-and-so, this big, enormous announcement that makes you feel like the world's coming to an end if you don't read this right now. And so what do? Well, you read it right now. And then when you get into it, you realize the headline was a whole lot bigger than the actual story. There was more in the headline, supposedly, purportedly more, suspectedly more. Well, no, actually, it was just a headline. I mean, all of the information I thought I needed to know was actually in the headline, because everything below the headline, from the byline down, is all made up. It's all fluff. It's all nothingness. In fact, in the story, it actually tells me that the headline was purely conjecture. It was a what if, or maybe, or possibly, or potentially. And yet I read the whole thing because the headline told me something magnanimous was important and just raging in the burning necessities of our day. Well, TikTok, now YouTube Reels, and Facebook Stories have kind of followed in the same suit. They use this sensational soundbite of communication to say, you really need to pay attention to this right now. You need to go here right now. You've got to read this headline right now. You've got to dig into this story right now. It's so important. It's so critical. Your life will not be the same if you don't watch this 32-second video clip right now. I see headlines that say things like, so-and-so blew somebody's face off. Such and such made a giant heel out of so-and-so somebody else. XYZ's new policy is going to blow up the world in 30 days. And that sensationalism in headline and soundbite form causes you to be sucked in and believe that that soundbite is true. But then the story reveals that that's not really what it was. Here's the really scary fact. And I need you to understand this as a leader because this is critical. Today, we have an entire generation, maybe 2 generations of people who never get past the soundbite. They never read more than the headline. They couldn't tell you the byline of the headline. They can't tell you what news source they heard it from. They couldn't tell you what date it was published. And they most certainly couldn't tell you that if you read the article, 3 of the 5 points were salacious and fictitious. And in the closing paragraph, they say, but this is all conjecture because I'm really just theorizing what might happen if. Meaning, the headline is pure fiction. Because most young people today, at least the last 2 generations, don't read past the headline. Now, why has this become such a sticking point in my craw? I'm doing some research on some speeches that I'm working on right now in a series called Faith, Family, and Freedom. I'll be sharing some of those here on Leading Leaders. But one of those concepts is the power of family in relationship to raising up our young. You might know that there's a race in Virginia right now, not yet decided to the best of my knowledge as of 7 a.m. Central Time on November the 3rd. It hasn't been called by the major media yet, but that race is hinging on a statement made by one of the 2 gubernatorial candidates. His statement was, I believe the schools make a better decision on how to raise children than do the parents. What? Are you kidding me? And so as I was doing my research, I dig back into some of the older law type stuff, and I'm reading through various things about how the family structure was set up and what the government relationship was to the structure, and where does the church fit into all that, and does it even matter, and then what about individual rights versus parental rights, and where does all this come together? And I stumble across this old case from, I believe it was 1944. The title of the case is what I want you to research, so get your pen and write this down. Prince v. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, 1944. I want you to look that up. The case was decided in 1994. The trial started in 1943. It actually went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court came down with a decision. Now, I Googled that yesterday, just the title, just Prince v. Massachusetts Commonwealth. And what I found was almost every, probably the top 5, maybe 10 clips that came back that explained to me what the case was about, what the case decision was, and how the Supreme Court decided on that case. They were all almost identical. They all said pretty much the same thing. The state has the right to overrule the parents when the decision is between them and different. Almost every Wikipedia, Google reply, news agency, etc., who quoted the case, Prince v. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, used the clip out of the actual writing that said the state has the final say in whether or not children are raised in a certain way. Irony is when you go back and actually read, which I did, the entire Supreme Court report, the dissenting and the agreeing, what you find is that they opened that very paragraph with, we believe the parents have the right to train up a child in the way they should go, and the responsibility for training, such as education and religious and moral training, falls on the shoulders of the parents. However, in an instance when the state has a vested interest in protecting the child against things like child labor laws, then the state has the ability or the right to override the parents and say, hold up, you can't abuse your children. This is why it came to court. Now, Here's another little factor you might want to know. The whole reason that this made it to the Supreme Court was because there was a parent who was encouraging her two sons and her niece, who was living with them, to go out and hand out little Bible tracts in their community. And there was an opportunity that people would pay them up to 5 cents for their little Bible tracts. And those little Bible tracts would then go back into paying to buy more of those little Bible tracts. It wasn't like their source of income. It was just replenishing the source, so to speak. But someone in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts said, hang on, we don't like them doing that. We don't want kids proselytizing. We don't want kids spreading this religion. So what is a way that we can, I know, child labor laws. So they tried to prosecute the mother under child labor laws. And because the two boys were her sons, the state said, climb a rope. But the niece, that's a whole different story. No, the one catch was that the niece actually never sold any, nor did the mother. The only ones that actually were transacted were by the sons, and since they were the household, there was no law broken. But the case did make it all the way to the Supreme Court. They argued back and forth, and the Supreme Court finally said, look, a parent has the primary obligation for religious training and educational training of their own children. But when it comes to child labor laws, if you're pushing the line, if you're doing something with kids that maybe you shouldn't be doing, then the state has the right to step in and say, okay, that's too far. You need to stop. Okay. That's not what any of these Wikipedia results will tell you. In fact, if you just search it, I challenge you, I dare you, if you're a leader of any caliber at all, if you're any good for anything as a leader, do not stop at the headline. Do not stop at the first Google reply or the 15th Google reply. Find the original source of the document and read the whole thing. Chances are what you're getting is buttercream icing on a balloon. You're getting a very sweet covering that tells you exactly what you want to hear, or maybe it's exactly what they want you to hear. It sounds good. It sounds solid. It sounds like the research has been done. The jury has decided the case is closed. Like climate change and so many other vaccine type things that where the case is closed, the facts are in, the science is decided. And we can't explain to you why we're wrong now, but eventually it's going to be right, and you're going to realize it. And so it is with parental rights. And so it is with the strength and the structure of family. And so it is with independence and with freedom and with liberty and with individual rights and responsibilities. See, that's what our nation was founded on. Sure, there were some idiots who owned slaves. I don't rebuke that at all. I do rebuke the idea that we were built for the purpose of, or only succeeded because of, slavery, because most of the people who came here, the first fight they had with England was, we want to abolish slavery. Look it up. It's written down. There are documents to prove I'm not a nut. This is truth. It's not the buttercream icing on the outside of the balloon or the buttercream icing on the outside of the poo-poo cake. But you're not going to know that if all you read is the headlines. You're not going to know that if you do your research at the TikTok level and you stop after the sound bites. You're not going to know that unless you dig into the meat of the article. Sure, read the headline, read the byline, read the article, and then find the source from which the article originated, and you're going to find there's a whole nother level of truth out there that you've been deceived about. I want you to take the time as a leader. Don't stop at the headline. Don't stop with the soundbite. And don't call yourself a leader if you allow those lies and manipulations to change the way you think and operate in this world. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.